Hello friends, welcome back. This is Angular Developer Series. We are on episode 10. We're building e-commerce web application, and in this video I will be showing you how we will use the Azure AD B2C. AD B2C stands for Azure Active Directory Business to Consumer Authentication and Authorization mechanism with our Angular application and 4 different microservices: orders, profile, products, and cart services. So it will be interesting, and this is something that we have never done, though the channel has similar videos, but this is really going to be interesting, playing with multiple services with AD B2C. So without delay, come, let's get started. Alright, first let's take a look at the demo of the application, how it behaves. Then I will show you step by step of how you will configure the code. Don't worry about the coding, it's all about steps that you need to follow, and you should know how to configure these things to get to the state. Alright, so this is the application that I'm running from my local. This is Angular 16, but 17 is also, it's exactly same code. However, if you hover on these things, you see this is cart, this is orders, products, and user web. Okay, so this is what I'm locally running. So before we step into the code, first understand the application, how it behaves. So when we land on the home page, see, nobody has logged in. I'm still able to get the products. If I go to a different route, it still works. If I go to shop, it is still working, and you can also see this data is being retrieved from the locally running web API, which means the product service is also protected, but few of the APIs are not protected because we don't want it to have any authentication for such APIs, because we are just showing the data here. Right now, if I click here inside the product details, still it is calling a different API. We are getting the data, right? Still no protection. However, the moment you think that it has to be added to the cart, right, when I click on this, you can see what happens now. See, now the application is forcing the user to log in because the cart service is now being converted into saving the data into the real database for the given user. So we need to know which user did add what cart item, right? So I'm going to use my existing login and login. The moment I log in, you can see next it is taking the token for all of those things and it's going to add it. See, now it's adding, it's added, right? There are interesting things that you should need to understand. So if I hover here, right, let me go to a different page. See, it's now retrieving all the data from the database. See, the cards is returning from the database. Okay, no locally stored content, everything is coming from the card, and the user ID is 1. Now something that is interesting and important things to understand. Okay, so I'm gonna close everything, or maybe probably let's go by one. Okay, so let's clean up this so you know what's going on here. Okay, so go to shop, I'm gonna log off so that it's easy to understand. Okay, now if I go to the shops, there is no authentication, nothing, everything looks good, great. But the moment I go to shopping cart, it is forcing me to log in, which you already saw. It is forcing me to log in, but you should understand there is something interesting happening here. Okay, there is something called a token call was going out. Okay, so I click on token, it is calling a token endpoint and it is doing some post. It is basically posting some information. It is saying, get me a token which will have a scope. The scope is coming from these two. So I'm sending some information here. Okay, let's understand this. See, there is a scope of cart.read and scope of wishlist.read. Okay, we will see where this is coming from. Basically, there is a request sent to Azure to get a token, and after it return the token, if you go and take this content and see what's there in this, go to jw.ms, paste it, and if you scroll down, there's something called scope. See, there's a scope which is coming here, right? So That's interesting, right? And then that scope content was sent as the bearer token because APIs are protected with the scopes. Now, there's one more interesting thing that you're going to see. I'm going to enable a piece of code that will trigger two more APIs in the front end. So I'm going to enable get profile and get orders. Okay, so let's go to home page. You see this? There are two things going out. So let me log out and I will show you. So I logged out, logged in. You can see two different calls going on. So the first token you see, it's calling the token endpoint, but look at the payload. The payload is now different. It is sending address.readScope, activity.readScope, and userprofile.readScope. For that, it received a payload. This token is different. Look at the next token. Look at the payload. It is sending order.readScope. Okay, so basically what happens is based on how we configure, right? Each API will have its own scope. Based on the scope, it will request for token and that token will be forwarded to its respective endpoints. Okay, so if you look at this endpoint, the token that was going to this endpoint, copy this. Token did not have a scope that was there earlier. You see this? So that's what is happening. So we're going to configure all of these things to see how it is communicating with different microservices and getting authenticated. Okay, so that is what we're going to see. All right, so the first thing is we need to log into portal.azure.com. I have already logged in with my email ID. Now I have already shown multiple videos of how to create Azure AD B2C. If you have already seen those videos, this video will be a little similar, but I'm gonna highlight important things what we have to do. Okay, if you're a first time watcher, you will still be able to make it. Now there are two options for you. You can come here and click on Azure AD B2C. Search Azure AD B2C, you'll end up seeing this. Click on this and then you will get to this page. This is something related to the existing login. So all what you have to do is we have to say Azure Active Directory B2C. See, under marketplace there's called Active Directory B2C. If you click on it, it will take you to this page. Okay, that's where you will create a Azure AD B2C tenant. Now there are a lot of people get confused with this, what is tenant and all. So in Azure terms, right, tenant, a directory, organization, they're all same. Okay, based on how you speak on a particular context, this tenant, directory or organization name has been used, but all these three things are same. Okay, now if you're first time doing, you can click on create a new Azure AD B2C. All what you have to do is you provide a name, a initial domain name. For example, let's say I wanted to start a bakery and then the bakery has the name. Okay, so let's say Karthik coffee shop. Okay, if this name is popular, if people know about this, then this is what the name I would like to choose. Okay, so what will happen is there will be a domain created here. You see this karthikcoffeeshop.onmicrosoft.com. okay, this is the name will come up when people try to log into your site, and then choose such a unique name. If you already have it, I will tell you what you should do, but if you're doing it for first time, choose this name, provide a subscription, put it under a particular resource group, and then click on review create and create it. After you create, you can navigate to that particular place which it was created. If you already have it, you know probably how to do it. Click on this name, click on switch directories. It will show you all the directories here, and I have created such a AD2C called learnsmartcoding.onmicrosoft.com. This is the name that I created. So I'm going to click on switch. That will take me to the particular active directory, meaning a particular tenant, right? Now, in order to differentiate, I change this color going into settings and click on appearance and choose the black theme, so it will be visible that I'm on a different page. Okay. After you landed on here, now you should click on Azure AD B2C or search Azure AD B2C. The moment you do it, you will end up and come here. Okay. Even for the first time users, this all is going to be there. Just that when you go inside each of the stuff, it will not be there for the first time user. Okay. At a high level, we need to first create user flows. User flow means it's a set of direction or a set of steps that is already pre-created by the Azure portal, like the team. Microsoft has given all those predefined stuff, so we will use it so everything is easy for us. Okay. There is something called custom policy, which will be little complicated compared to how you use the existing feature, but we will not talk about such thing now. Let's keep it simple. We will be creating user flow to follow the steps. Now, under here, after user gets logged in, all the users will appear here. For this, learn smart coding at the rate, like on Microsoft.com. Okay. App registration is something that where our application is registered. Okay. So now the very first thing is user flow. Click on user flow, and I already have a set of user flows. Okay, I'm going to show you how you will create user flows, but I will be using the existing user flows. Okay, now click on add user flow. You can see the predefined one, right? So what we will be using is sign up, sign in. So in order for a user to sign up and sign in, we will use together as one policy. This is the existing policy. Okay, instead of creating separate things, we will use this itself. So click on this and it will ask you which one to choose. Recommended version is what you have to choose, and click on create. Tip number 1, it will always be prefixed with less. I suggest you to strongly use only the lowercase letters. Okay, so for example, sign up, sign in, flow. For example, it has to be a small letter. Click on this, like you give name according to whatever you want, but let's say this is the name. Okay, then there are two options. You wanted to sign up with the email, the local email address. Like local means the email address that you use will be as part of this tenant under this login. Okay, or if you have social identity, you can choose this. Remember, if you're doing it for first time, these options won't even come for you. For me, it is there because I already created it. So I can choose this as default. I can choose this if I want. Okay, but I'm going to leave it because I will consider as myself as new user, so I'm not going to do anything. And then multi-factor authentication. Okay, multi-factor authentication is to have a extra security to make sure that user is only doing it. Okay, so for now I will just choose as email, but I will enforcement as false. I will not switch on or conditional because it will be a little annoying when you do a development. Actually, when you go to production, you can enable this for a particular user or for the whole organization itself, but I'm going to switch it off for now. And then if you come here, there are two things: collect attribute, return claims. Okay, so attribute collection means certain things that you can collect it from the user. I want to collect a given name, a surname, and an email address. And if you click on more, it will show you all of these things, right? So all I want is I want the given name, the surname, and then probably a display name. That's it. I want to collect only these three information, but I wanted to return in the claims of this display name. I wanted to return this also. What else I want to return? I wanted to return my surname, like whoever's surname. I wanted to also return a claim that tells whether the user is a first time user or is a returning user. Alright, so I want to return all of these things, and I will say okay. I can click on create. The moment I click on create, The user flow has been created, and where is that user flow? It is here. Now if you forget to do something, it's okay, you can come inside and change those settings. Okay, so now the first thing is properties. What do you see here? You can see whatever we did there is coming here. Okay, alright, so it's all here, it's all default values, we don't need to change. In case you wanted to make the password so complicated, you can enforce the password reset, self-service password, SSRP, they call it as SSPR, so self-service password reset. Okay, and then you can make it as simple, strong, legacy, whatever it is. Like, you can do this configuration. And then the new thing in Azure AD B2C is captcha. You see this, it's in preview. If I do check this box, then whenever the user is signing in or signing up, there will be a captcha displayed and they have to solve the captcha. Alright, I don't want to do it, I'm going to disable it. And then user attributes, let's understand this user attributes. Okay, so there are custom attributes and user attributes, right? You can also create your own user attributes. So if you look at the user attributes, right, there is a display here. You see something is called as built-in, something is called custom. By default, customs will not come. I created certain things, that's why it's called as custom. And you can create your own custom attributes by going to manage user attributes. Okay, it will take you to the outside of the user flow where the user attribute is here, and then you can add your custom attributes. Okay, now to keep it simple, I'm not going to add any of these things, but I will show you certain videos which I've already demonstrated. Alright, so we created one user flow. Similarly, we have to create two more user flows called profile editing and password reset. Okay, so if I click on profile editing, I say create, and then this is also same. Basically, this is profile editing. So profile editing, I'm gonna give name like that, but give me a few minutes, I will show you whatever was already created. Okay, here also I'm saying if in case I wanted to change my profile, I will still use my email to log in. Alright, the remaining thing is all same, but here there's something that you need to understand. Okay, when the user was signing up, we collected certain informations called display name and surname and last name, right? So profile also, I'm telling them, hey, you can come and change your display name whenever you want. Okay, but I'm not allowing you to change your first name and last name when you try to edit your profile. So that's why the display name alone, I'm saying collect the attribute and return the claim, but I don't want you to change any of the other information. So only that part will come. Okay, now I can click on create. That will create a user flow for profile editing. Similarly, we will create another user flow for password reset. I will click on create, recommended password reset, right? So I will say password reset 1. This is just a name, don't worry about it, I already have a new one. This is just a name because we're not going to use this. I will show you whatever was already created. Okay, so I'm saying reset the local password, like the password using the email address, and then the remaining is all same. See here, we're not collecting any information, it's just the return claim. Okay, I will click on create, and that flow is also created. Okay, so these three flows are created. Logically, you can go to the user flows. Like for example, you can actually test the user flow. So in our case, right, the user flow that I wanted to use is SUSI. I click on this. This is exactly what we did with a different name. Okay, if you go to properties, it is currently doing the same thing. And if I go to user attributes, you see this, I'm collecting display name, email address, given name, surname. Alright, so you can click on run user flow, and actually you can select certain applications and run user flow. So that's how you can actually test your user flow. Okay, but there is some issue with this one and it's not working, so I'm not gonna show that route, but definitely I'll come back and show you how you can do this as a separate video. Now we created three user flows, right? So let's consider SUSI means sign up, sign in. So this is the user flow I created, and then there's profile edit, and then password reset, this one. So the remaining user flows, whichever is there, I'm going to delete it so that it's not confusing. Okay, so these things are newly created, I'm going to delete it. All right, so in our case we will use this SUSI, sign up, sign in, profile underscore edit, and then password reset, password underscore reset. Okay, so these three things you're going to use it. Now the next thing is application registration. Okay, so every single application that you use for Azure AD B2C has to be registered. So in our case, we have these applications. So let's go to github.com/learn smart coding, and if you go to repository, to make it simple, right, I've already updated everything. So there are 4 microservices: products, user profile, orders, cart, and this one is the Angular application. So we have to register these 5 applications. Now let's understand logically. This Angular application is calling one or many of these endpoints. 4 are 4 different services. All right, so this is calling all of these things. So let's open up the application here. Now to make it more simplified, you see this another one, microservice. This one has all of the 4 services inbuilt in one solution. Okay, so that is what I have opened up here, so that it is easy for me to run multiple things at one shot. So I can actually right click and go to a configure startup project and say multiple startup project, and I have selected all the web project as start. You see this start, the 4th one is start. All right, so that's why you see these 4 running from one solution, right? Now these 4 are being called by one one Angular application, right? It is calling cart service, product service, order service, profile service, all of those things. Now how do we configure this in Azure AD B2C? You go to app registration. Okay, and if you're new, none of these things will appear, but I've done enough here. That's why a lot of things are appearing here. Okay, you have to click on new registration. Here you give a meaningful name. So I will name something called Smart Card Hub Web App Dev. It's a dev environment, so it's just a dev. Okay, now the important thing is here is the 3 things, right? First thing is only used by its own organization directory. So any user who belongs to this one, only those can be logged in. This one is any any Active Directory, anything from the Microsoft, which means any user who belongs to Microsoft login only can use it. We don't want that. We want the third option. Okay, third option will allow any user using any email ID, any valid email ID can become a user. Because if you go to amazon.com, you will use your Gmail ID or Outlook ID or any other ID, right? It will still allow you to log in because we are consumers for their business. That's why it's B2C. So similarly, in our case, we have a e-commerce application. Any users can come and log in. That's why we wanted to use this approach. Now redirect URL, because this is a single page application, we will select single page application, and then we will use for now this URL. See, it become a tick mark, and don't forget to click on this checkbox and click on register. Okay, so I'm gonna register it. Now after you register, you see something called client ID. Note this client ID and note this tenant ID. Okay, and we will see where to keep this 2 information in the application. Now let's go back and click on again new registration. In this case we will be doing, so I'm going to create 4 more thing, and this time this will be a product API. So the one of the microservices is the product API. All right, so product API, again I'll choose the third one. Here in this case it's a web application, and we need to choose a product endpoint. So here, what is the URL that is running? So this is the URL it is running. So I'll choose this and then click on this and do a register. Now I'm going to show you a few important things here, and you are going to and I will show you what was already done and explain you, right? So first thing here, also this is a product endpoint. It has a client ID and a tenant ID. Now look at this application. Let's open up the product. In product, okay, because this is microservices, because microservices means it's very small, right? And product will have just the product related microservices. So I have two controllers. One is product, one is product review. Both are different. Product is going to give you anything related to the product, but product review is the reviews done by the users for the product, right? So there are two controllers for me. I wanted to separate the scope of the scope means under which what you can do at a particular given time, at a particular area, I would say, right? So now, because there are two things here, the first thing that you need to do was expose an API. You click on expose an API on the web API app registration and click on add a scope. You can either click on add a scope or first you create a application ID URI. So if I click on this, it will ask me, okay, your current URL is this followed by some random GUID, but we don't want to do that. We want to have a meaningful name. So in our case, we will say smart card hub, and then we will say it is product slash API. Alright, so we have to provide a unique URL. You see this has to be a globally unique URL. Because this is dev environment, I will just prefix as dev followed by smart card hub. It's a project name, the microservice name followed by API. So the moment I say yes, it will be saved. Then I can click on add scope. Add scope will become a scope. So I wanted to say product.read. I wanted to create a read scope, okay, where only read permission is given. And you see this, after I give this will be the final URL. Okay, so I'm adding a scope, and then I will also add product.write scope. Two scopes, one is for write access, one is for read access. So I created like that. Similarly, there is another controller called product review. So I will create product review.read scope and then a write scope. So now the fourth thing is it's a product review.write. So the four scopes created, two for one controller, the other two is for the other controller. Now basically we are exposing these four from a particular application registration. Now let's go back and go to the one that we created with the dev for the web application. So click on the Angular application registration. So once you have your Angular application registration open, click on API permission. Now here we are saying, okay, there is someone who's exposing the API, but who is the consumer who has access to access those APIs. So that is what we are going to do. So you click on API permission and then click on add a permission. Now we will have option to choose here, right? So I can go to APIs my organization uses. So go to APIs my organization uses and search for the one that we used. So smart card hub. You see this, the product API dev that we created for the dev. I click on this and I'm going to select all of these four and add permission. The moment you add, basically the Angular application is now having access to those four things. But you see this, the permission is still not granted. So click on grant admin consent, say yes. Now everything is having admin consent. Okay, so here we are not exposing anything. This is a consumer. Okay, this is the Angular application, just consumer. Now similarly, let's open up this application to keep it short and simple. For orders, I have one controller. Makes sense to have one scope, right? That's why I added a scope called order.read, order.write. Similarly, for cart service, we have multiple controllers. According to that, I have two different scopes, cart and cart wish list. Now, last but not least, under users, profile, we have 3 more controllers. So I wanted to have more customized one. So user profile, user activity, address. There are 6 scopes, each 2 for each controller, right? Now these are the scopes that is required for the API, which I already know according to what we have built. So I created 3 more application exactly how we did for the new registration, right? If you look at this, I already created one is for product, one is for order, one is for cart wish list, one is for user profile. I'm going to go through these things so you understand what was done. So we go to exposing API, you see this address.write-read, user activity.write-read, user profile.write-read. So this 6 has been created. Similarly, for orders there will be 1, great, and for cart wish list there will be 2. Now here is the important thing. If you go to the web application, the web application that I used is this one, exactly what we did here. Come to API permission, click on add permission and go and select every single 4 applications output. Like we saw how to select for product here. Similarly, I added all the things from user profile, all the things from the orders from here. Like for example, let's do it right away, right? So let's go to this place, go to add permission and select every single of the 4 services. Like for example, cart services. So I click these 4, add permission, and then I click order. I click order, added it. Product is added, cart is added. There's one more that we need to add. What is that? Profile. So I select all the profile things. So this is the Angular application that we are doing it. I selected all the 4 applications thing and then I click on grant admin consent, say yes. Now every single is given access. Okay, this is what we have to do. Now Azure AD B2C configuration with respect to Azure portal is done. Now whatever we have created, we need to put it back to our application, right? So simple thing is, let me show you for one application. Let's open up product. What have you done is here, we need to install a package that supports identity service. After you install, all what you have to do is go to the settings, and I have Azure AD B2C settings. In the settings, I created this scope here for the right here, review and review scopes. All the scopes are here. There's a policy ID, that is SUSI policy, that was created. Okay, whatever name that you created, you put it there. Make sure everything is small letter. Domain is our learnsmartcoding.com. This is nothing but the organization name. Like for example, we started with Karthik Coffee Shop, right? On Microsoft.com. If that was the name, I would have given Karthik Coffee Shop here, right? Instances, again, the name of the name that you choose .b2clogin.com. Instance is different, domain is different. We fall under Microsoft domain, but the instance is under b2clogin.com. Client ID. Now this is web API. For web API, in order to get the client ID, we go to this one, take the client ID here, copy this, come and place it here. That is what you need to do. Don't worry, when you get the piece of code from github.com, you can straight away run the application, it will work, except the database part. None of the configuration will give you error, so you can run the application and make changes by your own one by one, so that you know where you stuck, how to solve it. Okay, so the application that I'm going to give you is a working application. right? So this setting is done. What else is done? If you go to the program.cs, you can come all the way through up, and there is a configuration here. We are saying add authentication schema, take the configuration from Azure AD B2C from this location, and that is what we are hooking up. So add microservice identity web API. That's the configuration that we use. So that any call that comes in, it will be authenticated. Not only that, the rest of the part is come here to the next place and then enable these authentication authorization. After you do these two things, the important thing is go to controller. Now if you remember, couple of APIs did not have authentication, right? So first thing is use the authorized attribute at the controller level, so everything is protected. And then scope, you can actually put a scope here. So for example, here you see this, if someone wants to use add product or update product, they need a right scope. The moment you put this piece of code, the incoming token will be checked whether the scope is present or not. In the demo I showed you, SCP scope will have information, right? You see this one of these things should be present here. Okay, so that is like address part. So when someone is calling the user address part, that scope should be present. That's what the scope is checked. But if you don't want a particular endpoint to be authenticated or authorized, just say allow anonymous. So get products, I don't want anyone to be authenticated. They should be easy to go through our products and see the products before they do any other action. So though this endpoint is within the controller, I am overriding at the method level and saying don't check anything, allow anybody to call this. That's what it means, right? So this is what the simplest configuration from the API side. Exactly whatever I explained you. We do it for orders, we do it for cards, we do it for user. Okay, once you do all of these things, just replace their respective client ID taken from the Azure AD B2C. After you do these things, the next thing is coming back to Angular application. In Angular application, you will find a branch like this, EP10, and it is also merged to main branch, right? It will have all the piece of code. The important thing that you need to understand is all the way to this the settings, right? This environmental file, I created a interface. So interface is custom interface that I created basically because this application is calling multiple microservices like product, profile, orders, cart wish list. I wanted to pass those particular information to those particular endpoints. Very important thing to notice here, because this is where it comes challenging. If you do small mistakes, it will give you hard time to find out. I had hard times, but I will demonstrate how to do it. Now what I'm configuring here is I have some local variables, like you see this. For user profile, this is the base URL that we set, right? After that, followed by slash address.read or address.write or something like that. Similarly for product, slash product.read, product review.read. These four are the base URLs, and these four are the locally running endpoints. For profile, you see this, these four are locally running. That is what here it is put. Basically here, this is what you need to understand. So I'm defining a read scope, what has to be read, what has to be write, and all of these information for each of the endpoints. Okay, now let's go to the auth config.ts. Okay, here what you need to replace, if you come to B2C policies, the name of the policy that we created, that has to be replaced here. In our case, it is sign up, sign in, password underscore reset, profile underscore edit. Okay, during demo we would have used a different name, but this is what a solid name that I used to create and reuse it, so I use this one. Okay, exactly same. Make sure you put the name properly here. If you're doing it by yourself, change this name. This is my name, my application directory name. You put your name, or if you want to use mine, it's absolutely fine. Okay, but you cannot configure it. That is the problem. So you need to change this and this. After that, the only thing that you need to change is this, the client ID of the web application. If you go here to the app registration and go to web app dev, there's the client ID. Copy this, paste it here. Remaining is all same. One more important thing that you need to do. So all the configuration details are listed here, right? So one of the file is app.module.ts. Okay, all of these informations have been given by the Microsoft team. I did not invent anything. Okay, all I'm trying to show you here is where to change what. After you do these information, there is something called msal interface configuration. Okay, so that will take us to a different file. This is the important piece that you need to do. Okay, now let's understand one thing. Okay, so let's say we are talking about cards. Where is the cards? We have something called cards, right? So let's go to the top. You see this interceptor factory is accepting a key and a value of array value. Okay, what it is doing, I'll tell you. When you try to call a particular endpoint, for example, in this case, right, what this will do is it will intercept the request that is going outside. For example, if I go here, actually it is trying to call this endpoint. This endpoint is cards endpoint, but the cart endpoint is going out. So it figured out, okay, you are calling a cart endpoint. I can see that. Let's see, where is that? Okay, here is that. I can see the cart endpoint is going here. Let's see, where is this coming? Here. Can we see the endpoint? Here. So let's go to the endpoint. Cart endpoint, right? See, the cart endpoint is here. So it knows something is going to call this endpoint. The moment it figured out that it is calling that endpoint as a get endpoint, it wanted to send a read scope. Okay, the read scope is nothing but coming from here. So for product, profile, orders, cart, it needs to send a token that has these two scopes. So the moment it finds out such information, right, it intercepts and finds. Now look at this. Before even calling this endpoint, it will actually call a token endpoint by sending these two things. It will send, okay, I want a token for this and this. The Azure AD B2C will return a token. That token, ID access token, if you copy and see what it is, under scope you will see these two. So this one is what is sent to the API. The moment it is sent to the API will figure out the incoming the incoming token is valid. I have a read scope for reading the cards. How do I know that? If I go to card service to the endpoint, I go to cards and it's calling card service. So let's go here. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here. So let's go here and go here. See, the breakpoint was hit because the incoming is having that scope. It is able to accept it and it went here. Okay, so let's go inside this and see what are the scopes. See, under the climbs, I have 20 climbs and I will have something called scope. You see this? It's coming, right? These are the scopes that's coming. That's why it allowed and it was able to return the data. So Angular, I will just summarize Angular application based on what you configure. So let's go one more configuration. So similarly, right, what I've done is for product, for user profile, for card service and order, I have configured all the protected resources here. Based on what is going out, the token will be generated. Okay, remember this, the token will be generated based on the outgoing calls. And I will tell you another example. You see under product, there is no get. I have disabled it because the product endpoints, get products and get products all, it doesn't require any authentication. We don't need to require any token. That's why it is disabled. We don't need that. In fact, we can delete this. Okay. One more thing you need to understand is, after you do all of these things, the token is generated, right? So the very first token, right, that will be based on the login will not have any of these scopes. It is basically to get the real ID token and access token. Okay, but every time that you try to access a different endpoint, it will request for the token for the first time. You see this in this request, it has these information, right? Look at this. It is requesting these scopes and there's something called code, right? This is the code that was initially retrieved from Azure AD B2C, that was forwarded to again same access token endpoint, and then the token specific to the calling endpoint. So let me tell you important thing. Okay, let's summarize this one more time. Before we make a call to a particular endpoint, in this case cart endpoint, okay, based on the initial token that was retrieved, it will call the token endpoint and then it will send a payload. In the payload, we spoke about the scopes. Apart from the scope, this code that you've seen, that itself is retrieved from Azure AD B2C for the very first time. Okay, so that is what will be sent, and then it will retrieve the respective endpoints. Once you have this information, this is what is forwarded to the particular endpoint. So in our case, every time the cart related endpoints are called, this access token is sent. Every time the product is called, product related access token is sent. For orders, for user profile, their respective stuff will be sent. And only for the first time it will do, until unless the time is over. After the time is over, it will request one more time. Okay, just to prove you, if I keep going to the shopping cart, it won't keep calling the same thing. See, if I go here, if I go to this, see, again it won't call because it already has the data. All right, okay, great. So I hope you enjoy and you understood this. So let's summarize one more thing what we did. We were able to create Azure AD B2C tenant, and then we spoke about the user flows, we spoke about app registration, and then we also saw how to configure these things in the .NET Core 8 API and then in our Angular 16 application. Now I will give you another bonus tip. There is something interesting called enrich Azure AD B2C token. Alright, if you have noticed, our token is having extra information. You see this? User ID, employee role, extension name, roles, everything is coming. All of these things are coming based on one of the video that I've already demonstrated. If you want to take a look at this video. This will tell you how to use the API connector in Azure AD B2C user flows and customize this information. So whenever you use this and try to log in, a new user is automatically created when you log in, right? And that information is what we see in the claims. Okay, so I hope this is a different video compared to the videos that we already have it, and I hope you enjoy this video. Don't forget to like and comment, subscribe to my channel, and if you have any specific questions, do let me know. This is one of the very important piece of our Azure AD B2C authentication for our Angular and the web API applications. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech tutorials. And don't forget to hit the bell icon to get notified when we post new videos. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Happy coding!